Hey guys, Tammy here, and today we're going to talk about the narcissist's need for admiration. Okay. This is one of those narcissistic traits that, can be an advantage or a disadvantage at different points in time. And I think that understanding their need for admiration is something that can help you in the courtroom and in your negotiations and in your dealings with them if you understand how it works. As always, let me remind you, if you like this content, don't forget to hit like on the video. And if you like the channel, please subscribe so that you get notified as new videos are released. And always feel free to share this on social media. When a narcissist, has this need for admiration, it actually comes from a root of insecurity, right? They want to be admired and thought highly of by other people. Now, again, I will preface this by saying not all of them. I have seen ones that are very litigious, go around suing a lot of people. They're always difficult. They're always causing problems and all that kind of thing. But I would say that's a more unusual, extreme version of narcissism than what we typically see. Most of them do have this need for admiration. They actually want other people to like them, and they don't show that, right? That's part of what the insecurity that they hide. But this is where their charisma comes in. And, I can remember my ex-husband, when my late husband, Thomas, first, met me and talked with me and whatever, he was like, I just have a hard time believing that, anyone is as difficult as what you're describing in your ex-husband. And I think in some ways it made Thomas maybe a little hesitant at first in our relationship, because I think he kind of was afraid maybe I was a man hater or something, which I'm not at all. But I think he was maybe fearful of that because of some of the negative things that I said about my ex-husband. So ladies, be forewarned, and gentlemen too. It doesn't come across very well the other way either. But later on, when Thomas actually met him and interacted with him, he was like, wow, he's just one of the nicest guys. He's really super nice. And I'm like, yeah. I haven't heard that before. Right. And then later on, it was once we started to have things happen to where he would see, the manipulation and the things going on behind the scenes and all that different kind of stuff. Then he was like, wow, he is really good, isn't he? And I'm like, yeah. And one of the things that Thomas commented on is he said, I've never seen anyone with an ability to come in and have a conversation with you and listen to what you say and be able to just pinpoint exactly what's important to you, exactly what you want to hear, exactly what makes you feel good, and then be able to turn around and verbally give that back to you. So anything you were interested in, he would feign interest in, right? Or he would ask about your family. And then he had this uncanny ability to remember it and ask you about it the next time or whatever. I remember my ex working in a sales position for a large part of our marriage, and he was great at it and he was great with clients. Well, he had this just incredible ability to remember that, Scott that works at the golf cart course has a wife named Mary and two kids named Johnny and Sarah, and their ages and what school they go to, and that one of them plays soccer and whatever. He just remembered all of these details. And so when he would follow up with the person really, it makes us feel seen, right? It makes us feel validated. It makes us feel recognized, right? For that person to remember us and remember all these details about our lives. And so my ex-husband was really, really good, and still is, at that aspect of it. And that's part of what made him a great salesman. And it also caused people to really like him, which fed into the whole need for admiration. When they're in the courtroom setting and they have this need for admiration, what can happen a lot of times is, if we are doing what I see a lot of people do, which is attacking them attacking them in our pleadings, attacking them in our testimony, attacking them with the different experts, it is actually going to make them much, much harder to deal with, because now you've sort of outed them to everybody around in this process, and they really don't like that. This is where the whole the narcissist comes from. And what happens is they spiral upward and they actually become more combative and more difficult to deal with. So calling them out on things, even in your direct communication with them, as far as, messages and all that kind of thing, outing them is going to make them more combative, more difficult to deal with. I always say you want them to think you're oblivious. That's part of how you get the leverage. You want them to think you're oblivious while you're fact gathering, right? You don't want to be attacking them or calling them out on stuff that you don't like or that you think is a problem, because that actually causes them to become more combative. And the other thing it does is it allows them to adapt their behavior. That's something that they're masterful at because of this need for admiration. And so when you call them out on something that's problematic, they will actually adapt their behavior and find a different way to manipulate the situation. And then you're constantly trying to adapt to gather additional evidence, right? So it actually makes it harder for you. One of the things you want to do is, again, I've talked about this over and over, you stay very problem focused, you stay very child focused, right? And don't attack that other person, because they are going to come out with guns blazing if they feel attacked by you. And what that is going to do is just make it that much harder for you, because, I've said this before too, narcissists are willing to sink to a level that most of us are not willing to sink to, right? The morality barometer is lower generally for a narcissistic person because they justify it in their head, right? Everything's relative. There's no black and white, right or wrong. It's relative according to what's happening to me, how I feel at the moment, or what's fair. And so they have this sort of relative perspective when it comes to things like this. They're going to sink to a level of morality that, frankly, you won't sink to. Then they get the advantage because they're willing to play in an arena that you're not willing to play in. I find usually what I tell people is, look, as far as they know, everything's fine. You're not calling them out on things. You're not upset. You're not pointing all this stuff out. You're mostly focused on the positive things of you, how things impact your children, and what problem areas for the children are. And then in your interpersonal communication, it's just minimal. You say as little as possible. You communicate only the bare minimal facts, and you don't engage with them, because anything you come back and say is just going to invite another round of argument, right? And if they feel like you are sabotaging them or making them look bad in front of other people, then they're going to just double down on their attack. And, when I'm saying like, don't attack them and don't cause things to spiral upward, I don't mean don't have a boundary. That's not the same thing. Sometimes people, hear, oh, just roll over and let them have whatever and don't ever say anything and don't have any boundaries. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That is not what I'm saying. You have to have your boundaries, but boundaries don't really involve pushing back so much as they involve letting go. And I think people confuse that. I think many times people see having a boundary as pushing back on the other person. And honestly, it just becomes about not trying to control their world, just letting go. Let them do whatever they're going to do. You do whatever you're going to do. Don't make your decisions based on them. Don't make what you do or don't do based on them or their reaction. Okay? Let them just move through their world, because when they have this need for admiration, that tells you that they're focused on who? Themselves and what they're getting out of it. That is naturally not how the court wants you to come at it. Did that make sense the way I said that? That's That's not how the court wants you to come at it, looking at yourself, right? I say this over and over. The court wants you to come at this looking at your children. So if you are dealing with a narcissist and they have this need for self for admiration and for self-aggrandizing, then they're going to just by default do things in a way that benefits them and not the children. And this takes time. It takes time for this to play out. I was on a call tonight with my group of moms, and one of the moms said, it's been a year. It's been a year of me sucking this up and just letting him have his way in order to be able to prove how difficult he is, how uncooperative he is, and all of those things. She had to let it happen so that she actually then was able to gather the proof to be able to go back into court, right? And suddenly he's become a whole lot nicer. And I think it's because she's starting to expose who he really is behind the scenes. And that's very uncomfortable for him. And so he's got to try to save face and recover from that. And he's actually becoming nicer now because she let go. But if she had engaged in the fighting from the very beginning, then the court would probably be seeing both of them as the problem. This need for admiration that they have can really work to your advantage if you can use it correctly. You have to understand the dynamics. You have to understand the evidence you need to gather, and you have to understand how to go about doing that. If you'd like to learn more about my services, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's a link on that page. You can book a free consultation with a member of my staff, learn about my services and how I might be able to support you on your child custody journey. See you guys next time.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.